Once you log into your CommonApp account, it's actually going to bring you directly to this dashboard page. Yours will look slightly different. If you haven't already added colleges to the list, you won't see them listed here under the dashboard, and you will not and should not have this practice account logo at the top, and that's just because I have a counselor account for the CommonApp. I am going to recommend that we start with the CommonApp tab. That's where we're going to have the most general information about you, and this is the information that goes to every college. And so these answers will not change from one college to the next. You'll see along the side it has the bar of how we're going through this process. So we're starting with the profile page, and the first tab here is personal information. It's just asking for your name. I will say, when it talks about your legal last name, if you have two last names legally, but you only use one, you do still need to list both last names, because this is just how they track it, and they know that you're definitely the correct person who's applying. They do have a space here for a nickname that you might use. And just keep in mind as you go through this whole application that anything with a red asterisk like this is something that is a required question you have to answer, and anything that does not have an asterisk is something that you can skip if you don't feel like it's appropriate for you. So you'll see the rest of the questions they have here. And as you complete every question and section, you'll be able to hit the continue button. And from there, because I answered all of the required questions under personal information, you'll see it has a green check mark now. Under address, I put the school's address, because again, this is just my practice account. But you'll put in your mailing address there, and it does ask if there's another address to use. I think in most cases you guys will not have that. So we're going to hit continue. And again, you'll see as I'm filling this information out, everything that gets completed is going to have a green check mark. Under contact details, I'm going to say that I prefer my home number, and I'm using the school's number as my home number for this application. And it does give me the option if I want to put in an alternate phone number. Just as an example, I'm going to show you what it looks like if I decide to skip this question, even though it is required. So I'm going to hit continue. And once that loads, it'll move us into the next section. And you'll see that contact details does not have this green check mark next to it. And that's because I left out that answer to the alternate phone number. This is a nice way to help you monitor as you're going through the process that you've covered every question that you've needed to, because you're not going to be able to accidentally send the application until you filled out all of the pieces, because while anything is left unchecked, you're not even going to have the option for the submit button, which I'll show you a little bit later in the process. So as I continue through here, it's going to ask about demographics, and you'll notice that none of the questions here have a red asterisk until we get all the way to the bottom. And the only required question is that it asks, have you filled out these answers to your satisfaction? And so that's what this question is. It lets you fill in this information. The reminder is that these questions are not being used to make decisions about your acceptance to a school. In a lot of cases, the colleges track this information more after the fact because they want to make sure that they're keeping tabs on some of their data, but not necessarily being used in the application process and the decision process. So I'm going to say, yes, I've completed this to my satisfaction, and we're going to continue. And once it loads, it's going to now bring us to some geography. It wants to know what country and city you were born in and state. And so as you go through any of these, you can start typing answers, and you'll see the option in the drop down. And then you can answer how many years you've lived in the US and how many years you've lived outside of the US. And you'll see with any of these that you do have the answer options in the drop down. That got a little stuck. And so I could just open it back up and change it. I've lived in the US a few more years than you guys have. So I'm going to go to the top here where it says more than 20 years. And so I'm going to hit continue. Number of languages you are proficient in. You can go in and fill this out as it's most appropriate for you. And again, remember, any of those questions with the red asterisk are the required questions, and you can always move ahead and skip the ones that don't have it. And let's hit continue. Now, citizenship is an interesting section. It asks if you are a US citizen or not. If you are a US citizen, it says your social security number is required if you are applying for financial aid using the FAFSA. Now, this gets a little bit tricky, and so I always like to make sure I mention it, is the only required question here is about what your citizenship status is. It does not require the social security number because there are some students who may not be applying through the FAFSA. And so if I hit continue here, I didn't put my social security number in, but when I hit continue, it will give me this green check mark saying that I completed that section. So just be careful before you hit submit. If you are applying for financial aid, and I would recommend that most everybody does, you have to make sure that you do go back and add that social security number, because that's a great tool that they use to link your FAFSA information with the college application. So that's how the colleges can verify that you are the same person, because you never know how many other people across the country may have the same name as you. And so the social security number helps them keep track of that. This last question here under the personal information is for the Common App fee waiver. And this is saying that colleges want to make sure that the application fees don't pose a barrier. So if you are a student who has qualified for any of these other fee waivers or meets any of these other requirements, you would be eligible for a Common App fee waiver, which means that you would not have to pay for the applications to each individual school. It does send a question to your counselor, and we have to verify that this is true and that we do have it on record that you qualify for either free and reduced lunch, or that you've already been called eligible for an SAT or an ACT fee waiver. So again, just make sure that we have everything up to date in that case. I know sometimes our seniors don't go through the process of updating their free and reduced lunch paperwork because they may not plan on buying or eating lunch at Butler. But you do want to make sure that you have it updated if you're a student who qualifies, because this is the paperwork we would need to verify that you're eligible for this fee waiver, which is something to take advantage of if you're eligible. And then after that, you would hit continue, and you would actually be done with the whole personal section and that profile. And then right now it's not checked off with a green check mark because I did skip some of the sections. But once you were completing that section and you filled in all of those answers, you would have the check mark there and you would be all set.